Hello, welcome to my channel. I'm Tiffany, a retired librarian turned homeschool mom, and in this video we're going to continue our look at Lindsay Holiday's YouTube series on the Queens and Consorts of England. So this is Tea with Lindsay, or tea, History Tea Time. Yes, History Tea Time with Lindsay Holiday. And this is specifically looking at the Tudor Queens and Consorts. So this one video specifically looks like, and bear with me because, you know, Henry VIII. You have Elizabeth of York, Catherine of Aragon, Anne Boleyn, Jane Seymour, Anne of Cleves, Catherine Howard, Catherine Parr, Guilford Dudley, so that's Elizabeth's lover, and then the Philip of Spain. So that's not obviously correct order, just because the Philip of Spain is Queen Mary's husband, and then Guilford Dudley was Elizabeth's lover. So, and then of course Elizabeth of York was Henry VIII's mother. So this is kind of an interesting thing. Now, she doesn't go into in-depth detail on Henry VIII's wives. Not in this video. She does a two-parter, which goes into more depth with the 6 wives of Henry VIII. So she does, however, cover Elizabeth York. Now, remember, her mother, and then who was a disposed Lancaster. Not Lannister, again, Lancaster. No, I have not read those books. This is, if you're not confused, this comes from the Game of Ice and Feast of Ice and Fire, also known as Game of Thrones. So yes, he took some of this stuff from issues with the War of the Roses. So, and which of course deviates because, again, the War of the Roses was ended by 2 women. You have Elizabeth of York's mother. Now, Elizabeth of York is the sister of the 2 boys in the tower, as they're called. The 2 princes who were supposedly killed by Richard III. So she is their sister. I don't remember if she was older or younger. I think she's an older sister. Her mother, and then the mother of Henry VII got together. The mother of Henry VII was a widow of a previous king who was disposed, and she went and remarried a man by the can't remember his name. He was a Tudor. He was kind of a commoner. And these 2 women got together to put together their children and take back the throne from Henry III for Richard III, because nobody liked him. His wife was already dead, as it was their 10-year-old son. That had nothing to do with this. So Elizabeth of York is basically, she's been put on the throne along with her husband from their conniving mothers. So she has 3 children, and next video we'll get into that, if not more. You have the 2 boys, and I know she has at least 1 girl, because that gets into this whole maternal connection thing. Yeah, that's pretty much how you trace the current royal families back, way back to William the Conqueror. It's through the female line. It jumps around to the female line. So you have Elizabeth of York. She has those children. Her oldest son, Arthur, is married to Catherine of Aragon, who is the youngest daughter of Isabella and Ferdinand of Spain. Yeah, you know, those guys who funded the crazy person called Columbus, who did not discover America. I believe he, bloodthirsty monster, landed in Cuba or Hispaniola, somewhere. Bloodthirsty creature. But she's their youngest daughter. So she's originally married to Arthur. They do not consummate the marriage. She is very young, and then he dies. And so Henry VIII becomes heir to the throne. So he's the younger brother, and eventually he marries Catherine of Aragon. Only, again, she's older than him. So years pass. She still does not. She has multiple miscarriages. She's, I think, in her 20s by the time they married, and he's 18. So she has multiple miscarriages. She obviously, well known. She has 1 daughter, Mary. So he goes to divorce her but on the grounds that she was previously married to his brother. Only she swears before the Pope that the marriage was never consummated. They never slept together. So the Pope says no. Henry VIII breaks from the church, grants himself a divorce, and sends Catherine into exile and bans her from ever seeing her daughter again because she has to be punished. He marries Anne Boleyn, whose first child was a stillborn. Then she has Elizabeth, and then obviously she's unable to have more living children. Henry gets mad. He listens to his advisors who don't like her because she's very intelligent. Because again, she was pregnant and she made him marry her. So, like, I'm not gonna become, or no, I won't sleep with you until you marry me. So, that's because her sister had become, and various other naval ladies have become mistresses, and she didn't want that. So, well known, Anne Boleyn, the second queen, off with her head. So, her brother is killed first. And then you move on to wife number 2, which is Jane Seymour, who he was already seeing. And similar to Anne Boleyn, it was, I'm not going to sleep with you until you marry me, because I'm not dumb. Which he does, and then she proceeds to give birth to a son, Edward, and then die in childbirth. So, she died shortly after he was born. So, Henry finally had his male heir, but again, you want a spare. He's pressured into a political marriage, and he is married to Anne of Cleves because he thinks she's beautiful. They hate each other. And basically, they both willingly grant a divorce. Like, she happily took a divorce. And I think she actually lived in England. I thought she'd gone back. But in this video, he mentioned that she lived in England in comfort until she died. Then he marries a much, much younger young woman, Catherine Howard. Poor girl. She was 18. He was in his 40s. Yeah. So she was a young nobleman. She was actually in love with somebody else. She didn't really want to marry him, but, you know, you're kind of pushed into it. So she was actually having an affair. I think her uncle fell out of favor. People hated her. They revealed she was having an affair. The king wouldn't see her ever again, and off with her head. Then you have the final queen, which is Catherine Parr, and then Henry dies. She was not in love with him. She was not a virgin. She'd already been widowed twice. So, yeah. She was basically his nurse. I mean, that's what she was. She was his nurse. She made him reinstate his daughters to the throne. She kind of calmed him down, and then he died. And then she married the man she loved. Turned out he was kind of nasty. He hit it on Elizabeth, who was still relatively young at the time. She was a teenager. And so, yeah, and then she died in childbirth, giving birth to a daughter. Unlikely the daughter survived. So then you kind of had Edward, and she does cover a little bit of Lady Jane Grey, who was put on the throne with another gentleman. That could be Guilford Dudley. That's why that's in. He's not Elizabeth. But yeah, you have Catherine Parr, Guilford Dudley, maybe randomly. Mind you, he was kind of king, and they were never crowned. So they were married hastily, and within like 9 days, Mary comes in with Elizabeth, and they retake the throne because, again, no. Edward, as far as the people were concerned, Edward had no right to bypass them. So she is imprisoned in the Tower, and Mary is eventually pressured into killing her. It's, at least according to this video, this kind of makes sense. Basically, what happens is she knows that Jane is a pawn. She knows Jane is very young, that she probably had nothing to do with this. But people are rallying behind her to get rid of the Catholic Mary. So she's pressured. Mary is essentially pressured to have Jane kill. I think it's a couple of years later. the entire time she's in prison in the Tower. So then, of course, you have Mary, who's now queen, and you have Philip of Spain. So Mary Tudor was much, much older. She was in her 30s by the time she takes the throne, and she was in love with Philip. And he was not. He did not care. He saw her. She was older. He was actually a little bit younger than her. I think he was about 27. She was like 32. You had the couple of fake pregnancies. He basically was kind of done. And he wanted to conquer England. But of course, the leaders of and the Parliament were not particularly happy with this because they didn't want England to be swallowed up in the Spanish Empire. And so, of course, Mary dies, Elizabeth takes over. Philip proposes to Elizabeth as Mary is dying, and Elizabeth says no. So Elizabeth says no a lot to all sorts of people. No. Basically, she can't find one that will not take over. It's not that she didn't love men, not that she swore virginity. It was that she literally didn't want to be a pawn. I mean, she watched her mother was killed. Her father's first wife was exiled. And wife after wife after wife pretty much were used as pawns. And then so was Lady Jane Grey, and she was sick of doing it herself. Because again, her father didn't really use her. Her sister most certainly did. And so she just didn't want to. And so she betroths the crown to her second cousin. So here's the relation. Here's where we get the Stuarts, and I'll cover that video next. Go all the way back up to Henry VIII's sister is married to I believe it's the king, eventual king of Scotland. They have a son, James the First. He marries, he has a daughter, Mary, Queen of Scots. So James the First, Mary, Queen of Scots, is Elizabeth's second cousin. She marries, well, technically she's sent off to France and marries the prince, who already had been married and has children. He dies, she's sent back because her stepchildren don't want anything to do with her. Marries someone, then realizes he's a dickhead after she has a child and has him killed. And then they realize this and kind of dispense with her. And eventually Elizabeth has to kill her for the similar reason Mary had to kill Jane Grey, because she's Catholic. Mary, Queen of Scots, was Catholic, and basically Catholic rebellion. And she kind of was a little bit more involved than Jane Grey, because obviously much, much older. So he's eventually beheaded. But it's her son, is James Stuart. So that's how they're related. She's like third cousins. They're related through Elizabeth's father. It was her aunt's like great-grandson. Yeah. Strange things going on. I believe her mother was much older. The older sister of Henry VIII. But that is it for this video. Convoluted. We'll get to the Stuarts. I do enjoy her. She shows a lot of the imagery. She talks about the history, and this is very interesting to look at, particularly if you're looking at British history. This is a different take because you're looking at the queens. The cat is getting irritated. So if you like what you see, like and subscribe. Leave a positive comment if you have one. I'm covering her entire series. I have the Princess Diaries running next to this. That's the connection here. I love a variety of other book series. I have a bunch of other stuff planned. I have some more educational stuff, some travel stuff. So look at my library, like and subscribe, look forward to more stuff. And that is it. Thank you.